In this video, we'll go through all of the tools that are available and out there for making jewelry by hand. We're not going to go through our WigJig tools. We'll go through that in the later video. The first tool we'll discuss is flush cutter. The flush cutter has one jaw, one side of the jaws is flat or smooth, and the other side is beveled. When you cut wire with the flush cutter, the flat side leaves a flat end on the wire, and the beveled end leaves a sharp end on the wire. So you always want to have the flat end towards your finished piece of jewelry when you cut wire with the flush cutter. The next tool we'll discuss is round nose pliers. Round nose pliers have conical jaws. The best round nose pliers, the jaws are 1 millimeter wide at the tip. Round nose pliers allow you to make loops in various sizes. The closer to the tip, the smaller the loop. The further closer to the hinge, the larger the loop. And the round nose pliers are just like that. The next tool we'll discuss is bent chain nose pliers. Bent chain nose pliers look like this. Chain nose pliers have flat, smooth jaws. I'll try to hold these still for a second here. Flat, smooth jaws. They're for gripping wire and holding wire and for bending wire. And because the jaws are flat and smooth, they spread the bending force out. With chain nose pliers, you have a choice. You can have jaws that are bent like this, and you keep your wrist straight as you use them, or you can have jaws that are straight and your wrist has to be bent. For this reason, we recommend the bent chain nose pliers. And the chain nose pliers that we like have tips that are 1 millimeter wide here. So we recommend getting chain nose pliers, and we call them fine bent chain nose pliers that have the 1 millimeter wide tip. The next tool that we'll discuss is nylon jaw pliers. Nylon jaw pliers look like this. They have jaws that are wide and flat and smooth and made of nylon. You use nylon jaw pliers for straightening wire. You use nylon jaw pliers for flattening and hardening pieces made on one of our WigJig tools. These are nylon jaw pliers. The next tool that we'll discuss is a specialty tool that's called step jaw pliers. The step jaw pliers that we recommend have one jaw that's flat and smooth. That jaw is flat and smooth, and one jaw that has 3 individual steps. This allows you to make a loop in one of 3 sizes, and you'll always know if you make a loop on the first step, you're going to get a loop that's the same size. And the step jaw pliers that we recommend are called fine step jaw pliers. And those step jaw pliers, the first step is the size of the peg for our WigJig Delphi. The second step is the size of the peg for the WigJig Olympus or Olympus Lite. And the third step is larger still. And we use these to make jump rings, and we use them to make the initial loop on each piece of jewelry that we make. And they have 2 benefits. You always get a defined size for the loop, and the flat, smooth jaw doesn't mark the wire. So round nose pliers, both jaws are round. Round nose pliers will mark the outside of the loop and the inside of the loop. These pliers, the step jaw pliers, will mark the inside of the loop where you can't see it, but the flat, smooth jaw does not mark the outside of the loop, so they're very nice for making finished pieces of jewelry for that reason. Another specialty tool that we'll discuss here is a specialty tool called bent closing pliers. Bent closing pliers because the jaws here are bent. Closing pliers because there's a groove in the jaw that you can see there. And we use that groove to grip the wire in a loop and help us to close the loop. So we take a piece of wire like this, we hold the wire in the pliers, and because of the groove, the wire is not going to slip, and I can just squeeze it, and that helps me to close a loop like that if I happen to make a loop and it's not as closed as I would like it to be. So those are bent closing pliers, and again they have a groove in the jaws here and flat, smooth jaws. We showed you bent chain nose pliers. These are regular chain nose pliers, and they have flat, smooth jaws. And in general, we recommend that you're going to need 2 pair of chain nose pliers. One can be bent, one can be straight. We recommend at least one be bent, or actually both of them can be bent. It's up to you. But you're going to find that in some instances you're going to need to grip the wire with 1 pair of chain nose pliers. while you squeeze the wire with the second pair of chain nose pliers. So those are chain nose pliers. Now, the next tool that we're going to discuss is called a chasing hammer. Chasing hammer is a special jewelry type of hammer, and it has a jaw that's flat and smooth. You can see that this jaw here is flat and smooth. You use the flat, smooth jaw to hammer wire for flattening wire and for hardening wire. So, and anytime we make an ear wire, you want the ear wire has to be fairly malleable when you make the ear wire, but after you made it, you want it to be very stiff and permanent. And the way you make it stiff and permanent is by hammering with the chasing hammer. And chasing hammer needs an accessory called an anvil or a bench block. A bench block is just a metal block, and an anvil obviously is a little anvil shape. The anvil is nice because of the corners and the unique shape give you some options, and actually the hole in it gives you some options for hardening pieces of wire that are very unusual sizes. So we prefer the anvil, but the bench block also is a tool that works fine. And you use these for hammering and hardening wire. In some cases, you will use another tool for hardening wire called a nylon hammer. And you use a nylon hammer when you want the wire to become stiffer, but you don't want it to change the shape. The metal chasing hammer will flatten the wire, and it will visibly flatten the wire. And if you notice, most commercial ear wires, the rounded portion of the ear wire is flattened. That's something like a metal chasing hammer, or a stamping machine has done the same type of thing. The nylon hammer will allow you to harden wire without changing the shape of the wire. So that's a very important thing. And we use this in many cases, not necessarily for ear wires, but for other pieces. The one thing when you're hammering wire is you want to hammer wire one thickness of wire. If you hammer a piece of wire when one piece crosses another, that can create a weakness and can cause your wire to break. So that's our bench block there. We get rid of that. The last tool that we'll talk about is a tool called the cup burr and the pin vise. The pin vise is the handle, and it holds this bit that's called the cup burr. And what the cup burr does is it allows us to remove the burrs from a sharp end of a cut piece of wire. And we use these generally when we're making ear wires, because once we make an ear wire, even though we cut with the flat cut on the ear wire, there will still be small bits of metal, very tiny bits of metal that you want to remove, and you do that just by moving your cup burr back and forth very rapidly for about 30 seconds to remove the burrs from the cut end of the wire. So that's the cup burr. The little cup is right here, and the wire goes in right there. Those are the basic jewelry tools that we use, and that's the end of this video.